Hey guys, you're watching Car Topic, and today we're going to be looking at the Porsche that's stuck in your head, the Porsche 964. Now, in case you don't know what the 964 is, the 964 is the internal name used by Porsche when developing the 1989 to 1994 911. Now, unfortunately, the car that I'm driving in this video game isn't the 964, and that's because this game doesn't have the 964 in the game, so I'm using a bit of an older car. But other than that, let's get on with the video. Now, there's so many 911s to choose from, so why did I choose the 964? Well, obviously because it's in Bad Boys 1 and 2. Duh. But one thing that we have to understand before getting on with this video is what an air-cooled engine is. Now, in order to understand what an air-cooled engine is, let's take a look at what all engines are today, water-cooled. In a water-cooled engine, coolant surrounds the pistons in order to absorb the heat, and once the coolant gets hot, it flows through the radiator to get cold again and goes through the whole process all over. Now, in an air-cooled engine, a fan that is connected to the RPM system by a belt spins as the engine is operating. This causes the engine to cool down, and once the air becomes hot, there are release points where the hot air can vent out and allow more air to come in through the fan. This is what all Porsche 911s had before 1998. Now, before we talk about how awesome the Porsche 964 is, let's talk about all of the 911s that came before it. One fun fact about the 911 is that it was initially supposed to be called the 901, but under false information, they were told that that was not allowed and switched it to 911. The original 911 was made from 1964 to 1973 and was an instant hit with all crowds. After that, the Porsche 930 was developed from 1974 to 1989 and just grew on the previous popularity of the original 911. After the great success of the 930, Porsche realized they needed to do a complete refresh of the 911. So in 1989, they introduced the Porsche 964, our Porsche. Finally, we move on to the last of the air-cooled Porsche 911s with the Porsche 993, developed in 1995 to 1998. This was the pinnacle of air-cooled engines and provided a ton of power and a ton of fun. Unfortunately, the air-cooled engine has one major flaw: overheating. Especially towards the end of its life, the 911s were demanding more power and more speed, something that would heat up the engines much more than that fan could cool down. So in 1999, Porsche introduced the 996, the first water-cooled Porsche 911. But let's go back to the Porsche 964 and see what made it such a great car. The 996 had a 3600cc boxer 6-cylinder engine that made over 275 horsepower and only weighed around 2,400 pounds. Now, those must be some pretty decent figures today, but in 1989, that much horsepower and that little weight was a deadly compound that killed any supercar that it came across. So let's take a look at some of the 964's competition. The Acura/Honda NSX of the 90s made 270 horsepower and weighed just over 3,000 pounds. That's less power and more weight than the Porsche 964. The Porsche even dominated over Ferrari, as the Testarossa had 375 horsepower but weighed over 3,300 pounds. This much more weight in the Ferrari meant that the 964 was much lighter and actually gave out better performance numbers. So yeah, this Porsche was great, but so were all of the others. So why did I choose the Porsche 964? Aside from the fact that the 964 was in a few great movies, I chose it because if you ask anyone to think of a Porsche, the silhouette of a 964 is what appears in their head. And if a car is so iconic that anyone asked to think of it will think of the same thing, you know that you've got a great car. And that is why the Porsche 964 is the Porsche that's stuck in your head. Anyways, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you learned something about the 964. I actually did get this video as a request to make a video on vintage air-cooled Porsches, and in the process of researching for this video, I actually fell in love with air-cooled Porsches even more. So thank you so much for the request, and if you guys have a request for a video, please let me know in the comments, and also let me know what you think of the video. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time on Car Topic.